All right, everybody. Welcome to Aquarian Anarchy. I'm Chad Lemoyne. This is Marcus Pulis and Nico. And we also have our special guest tonight, Dan Taxationist Theft Behrman. We are really excited to have him on the show. And we also want to remind you, while you're here, like and subscribe to the channel. Like the show, subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends. And also, if you have a chance, go to our Patreon and sign up as a patron, and you get a little exclusive access to some extra content earlier than most folks. And we're going to be doing our after-hour show after the show, and you'll get that before the rest of the folks get it when it comes out on Saturday. And also, you can just show your support for the show that way. You can also go to the store. All these links are going to be in the description below, and buy some of the merchandise. Marcus has some badass shirts and masks that kind of poke fun at the whole masquerade that is going on all over the world. So, without further ado, let's get into the interview. Dan, welcome aboard Aquarian Anarchy.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I'm going to pull this out so everybody can see it. So when I met you at the 2018 Libertarian National Convention in New Orleans, I'm in Baton Rouge, so it's right down the road. I got one of these. I think you ended up ordered it and you mailed it to me or whatever, but this was always one of my favorite poems. Roses are red, violets are blue. Taxation is theft, inflation is too. I had a really interesting question from one of our friends, Jonesy. Shout out to Jonesy. He was really interested about this interview because the question he had was, he said, I just have a hard time understanding how society can function if people don't give back. And my explanation was, it's not about people not giving back. It's about shit not being stolen from people and calling it giving back. So what would your response be to that question?
Right. Yeah, I think it's pretty much that. I've realized I have a weird way of talking to people where I don't know. I have a conversation with somebody and I start to kind of get a feel of what their language is and how they talk, and that's kind of how I respond to them. And I don't really do it on purpose. It's not. I kind of feel like it's pandering in a way, but like it's really just like, no, let me try to explain this to you in your language. And but it would basically be some form of that. It would be like, okay, well, yeah, it's absolutely not about contributing to anything. We contribute to things all the time. We have internet. I contribute to my internet company putting up fiber optics all around the globe by subscribing to their service, and that money goes to that, and I enjoy that. I don't like giving money to the Department of Defense so they can bomb people on the other side of the world that they're just going to school or they're going to a wedding, don't deserve to get bombed. I don't like paying for that, so I wouldn't give them money. But I have to because they've got a gun to my head that says, yeah, give us money or else, or we'll take it. And if you try to resist, we'll arrest you. And if you try to resist, we'll kill you. That's really the main objection to this is, and the government's wasting most of the money that they take from us. So it's not like we're giving them all this money and they're putting it to good use. They're wasting most of it. And then they're asking us to thank them for it,
By wasting, you mean like paying their friends and
yeah,
and having really fancy shit that we don't have.
Half of it goes to corporate bailouts and subsidies and all this other stuff. The other half goes to it's basically laundered through the military industrial complex, which is one way to get money to your friends, right? Oh, we need more missiles. Let's buy more missiles. Let's just shoot them at whatever we can so that we have to buy more. And it's like they're overpaying, $30,000 for a screwdriver so that they can just transfer money from us to their buddies.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So question, how would you go about have you ever thought about taking their loopholes that they use and just giving it to the people and just saying, well, if we can't really take it down from a top standpoint, we can just do it through the people and using the same things that they do?
Yeah, so actually I promote this all the time. Most people don't actually need to pay income tax at all. The income tax is really, I don't want to say it's voluntary. It's there's an entire system of fraud that goes behind it, and we're not supposed to be paying it. If you read the Constitution allows for two types of taxes. One is a direct tax, which is apportioned by the population, and people think that means a direct tax on the people. Right. No, what that means is it's a direct tax on the states, because the Constitution is a contract between states. They're saying, okay, yeah, I'll sign this, and therefore we owe you taxes. That's what it is. And if you have more people in your state, you're going to pay more of that tax, and that was the agreement. The other thing is excise taxes. So if you use the federal government's ports, then that's a privilege, right? So you got to pay a tax on it. If you don't use their ports, if you don't use any of their facilities or anything else, you have no obligation to, it's not an excise. You're just doing business. You have your own property. You're trading your labor, which Supreme Court has said your labor is your property. Supreme Court has said you have an unalienable right to contract your labor and your property in exchange for other things. They can't tax that. But what they do is they trick us, and I can get into the whole history of this, but they've created a system where they trick us into signing these forms, which then obligates us to pay a tax that we're really not supposed to be paying.
For sure. And I think that 90% of everything that government does, frankly, is a trick of some kind. Mm-hmm. I mean, Lysander Spooner covered this pretty thoroughly. And, you know, the idea of taxation itself is, you know, nothing more than the same thing a burglar does. And this, I chose a Spooner quote that we'll put at the beginning of this to kind of cover this, but this wasn't the one. I almost chose this one, but this isn't a quote. It's a paraphrase. But Spooner basically said, if taxation isn't theft, or in his words, isn't burglary, then all a band of burglars have to do is call themselves a government, and it legalizes all their bullshit. So, you know, it's the same thing, and they do the same thing with war. They do the same thing with conscription. It's murder and it's slavery. So yeah, I think that is what they do.
And there's like a mystery that's around like this. They've also tricked people into thinking that, like what Jonesy was saying, like that this is the way that you take care of people, and this is the way you give back to the community. This is the way that you support the community, is by being taxed and paying your taxes dutifully and everything. And I'm not like Jonesy is more he's our homie towards our side than that. But he's going through that process of kind of understanding this on a deeper level, and wants to do that. So like when you get either the roads question or some of those kinds of things, what's the what were you going to say?
So I have this example that I use all the time, right? Okay, the government is there to help us because they care about us, right? Mm. And so there is, in the United States, a company that manufactures insulin. There's only 3 companies in the United States that are allowed to sell insulin in the United States. They sell these pens for $100 in the United States. Now, these same pens are exported to Mexico. The same company from the manufacturer in the United States, they're exported to Mexico, and they're sold in Mexico for $12. It is illegal to order those online from Mexico and have them shipped to your house. Mm-hmm. So if you're a diabetic, you might go through like 3 or 4 of these a month. That's $300 or $400 a month or more, depending on, you know, what your condition is. Where $300 or $400 a month versus, you know, $12 to, you know, $40, $50 a month.
Right.
If the government cares so much about you, why don't they let you import this? Now they'll say,
America first. That's why, damn it, Dan, come on.
Yeah. It's for safety reasons though, right? We can't have you importing this stuff from other countries. You don't know where it came from. Yes, we do.
Yeah, we do. It came from the United States.
So this is like a simple proof of no, the government does not care about us. And Trump said he was gonna fix that and lower the insulin prices, which this is the messed up thing. There's 47 companies in the entire world that manufacture insulin. And the reason the price is lower in Mexico, 2 reasons. One is they have more companies from around the world that are able to sell it in Mexico.
Competition.
And people could not afford $100 a pen. They wouldn't sell any of them.
They priced it down to the market. Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of people can, you know, they can relate to this. Well, I don't know. I say a lot of people. It's probably still a small group. But I used to be like into like video games and movies and all this kind of stuff. And we used to always talk about like, yeah, there's all these movies from other countries, but you can't import them because they have region coding on them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the exact same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, you buy, you know, The Matrix, the movie in the United States, and it only plays on DVD player from the United States. You buy it from Japan and it only plays on a DVD player from Japan. Why? Because they're selling them at different prices, and they don't want you to basically do arbitrage. Buy 1,000 copies of the movie in one country for $10 for the disc, where like that's all people are willing to pay, and then bring them to the United States where you can sell them for $20 or $30 because American consumers love spending money on that shit. They don't want you to do that. They want to make that extra $20 a profit. The movie studio wants to make it. So they put region coding on it. And that's exactly what that's exactly what the insulin thing is. It's region coding, except it's the government doing it to protect the pharmaceutical company. So if the government really cares so much about us and they say, oh yeah, we're going to make sure that, you know, you have all this insurance that's going to make sure you're able to afford your insulin, why don't you stop propping the prices up, right? Because their whole thing is, okay, if we keep the prices high, the pharmaceutical companies are going to make a lot of money. Let's figure out how to steal that extra money from the public at large so that our friends in the pharmaceutical complex can still make their profits. Because the only other solution is to get rid of their monopoly, let the prices fall. Everybody can buy their own shit without needing this complicated insurance policy, but then their buddies don't make these massive profits.
Right. It's all about taking, you know, robbing from the poor and giving to the rich, which is in essence what government is. You know, the people that we're talking about are what Thomas Paine called the knowabilities. Instead of calling them the nobility, he called them the knowabilities, because that's what they do. They don't have a real ability. Their only ability is to bully and pick on everyone else. And one of the ways that they do that is by, you know, back in the day, they would stop at the side of the road, hold you up and take your money. Now they don't even, you know, have to stop you. They just, you know, you're driving through whatever city and they just beep and they take your money right there.
Yeah, it's like it's just high tech con men is what it is now. They've conned people into actually like what Dan was saying, like fill out these forms because you have to, and then it's like, well, but what if I don't fill out those forms? Well, if you don't fill out those forms, then we can't take shit from you. It's like, well, I don't want to fill out the forms. Yeah, but if you don't fill out the forms, then you can't work. And they start it with, and that's what's happening with all of the stuff with the different mandates with either masks or with whether a restaurant can be open or not. It starts with them pushing that down onto those corporations or onto those small businesses, and then what in turn those businesses have to, you know, force that will onto you. They've got to pass the savings along to the customer by saying like, you can't. We're a private company. We can tell you, we can refuse you service if we want to. It's like, but you're not doing that to the governor or the mayor. Like you're taking whatever the mayor and the governor are giving you, and then you're just pushing it down to me. It's that same thing where like W-4s and all these different forms that you have to fill out and I-9s and everything. If those things weren't, if the companies didn't, if they pushed back against that, then you wouldn't have, it wouldn't filter its way down to the people who work for a living. So.
Right.
Hey, I also saw something on you said something where you said you got rid of your license and a couple other things along the lines of being considered a U.S. citizen. Could you go a little bit more with that?
Yeah. So I got rid of my driver's license maybe 12, 13 years ago now. I haven't registered a car in about that long. I, as of recently, no longer have an LLC. I used to have an LLC, but of course that's another contract with the state. And my goal is really to just cut off any ties that I have with the state. Because every tie that you have with the state, every contract you sign is basically an agreement giving them rights and access to your life. People don't really realize this, but as much shit as I talk about the government, the United States government for like being tyrants, we still have a relatively free country. The way that the Constitution was written was, hey, leave these people the fuck alone. But what they've done is they have very creatively and coercively manipulated us into signing a million contracts that surrender all of our rights. And so the more contracts you have, the less free you are. And of course, the kind of standard operating procedure that the police and the government agents and everything have is the assumption that everybody has these contracts, because do you know anybody who doesn't have a social security number? Do you know anybody who doesn't have a driver's license? Everybody's got that stuff. So whenever you encounter a government agency, they usually treat you as if you're just like everybody else and you have all these things. And when you tell them that you don't, that creates a problem for them, because they just don't know what the hell to do, because they don't even know the law themselves. All they're taught is procedure, right? The police are not taught what the law is. They're taught, okay, yeah, so here's what you do. You find a bush, you hide behind it, and if somebody goes by too fast, you pull them over. You get their driver's license, you put it into the system, see if they have any warrants, give them a ticket, send them on their way, and that's it. Now, if they pull you over and you don't have a driver's license, oh, well, what do we do about this? And if it's a suspended license, if it's an expired license, if it's this and that, then yeah, they know what to do. But if you don't have a license and you tell them you don't need to have a license, or if you have a license from a foreign country, they don't know what to do. And you would think like that's a pretty common thing, having a license from a foreign country, because I've been to, I'm in Mexico now, but when I was younger, I went to Mexico several times when I did still have a driver's license, and it would be like a no-brainer. Like, oh yeah, you want to rent a car? Show us your American driver's license. And they were like, yeah, whatever. You're a tourist. You got money. I don't care. Here's, they'll rent you a car. But for some reason, and I've seen videos of this too, police stopping people who bring their cars from other countries. They stopped this one guy. He was like, some millionaire. He brought his Lamborghini from Europe, and they stopped him. And they're like, yeah, well, you need to get American plates on it. Like, no, I'm visiting. You brought your car all the way over here to visit for vacation? Yeah, I mean, it's a fucking Lamborghini. Obviously, I have the fucking money for it. You don't understand. But it's like, this is the mentality. And it's like, people, it's funny because so many agents of the government don't even understand what freedom is. That's freedom. I own this car. And like, yes, this is financial freedom that not everybody can afford, but you have this amazing car and you can just say, oh, I'm going to go to anywhere I want in the world and I'm going to bring it with me. Right.
God forbid.
That's freedom. Yeah. And it's like, oh no, you have to get plates. And I've seen this too, because I've been stopped where I've had, I got stopped in California with a Mexican driver's license. And they told me, well, you need to get a California driver's license. And I was like, why? And they're like, because it's the law. And I'm like, I don't live here. I'm just visiting.
Right.
So what law says that if I come to visit California, and then they're like, oh, like they're stupid. And what was really funny about this particular instance was this was an LAPD cop. And LA is kind of weird. They have all these little different cities. I was actually in Culver City, which is a separate city, and I was driving and I saw the guy tailing me and I knew my plates were expired and I saw him tailing me and I'm like, okay, if I can just cross this line, I'm going to be in a different city and he can't stop me. Right. Well, apparently I drove into the city.
You drove into his city, so he was just waiting for you to get there.
Yeah.
Oh shit, man, you fucked up. Yeah, you gotta wait. You gotta run away when the lights are on. I know some people who've done that in down here in Louisiana, where they just haul ass to the next parish or whatever, and then when they get over the parish line, that sheriff can't take over, and unless they've called the other ones, you're free.
Yeah,
you fucked up, man. You waited. Yeah. You just waited.
Well, but I didn't. But at this point, I didn't have any registration on the car. I had the Mexican license, and they basically said, okay, well, I guess we're not going to write you a ticket, and that was that.
What would you do? I mean, the thing is, if they write you a ticket, you don't live there.
They have.
Yeah.
In Texas, I got a bunch of them. Yeah.
But, so I got a bunch. That's my question. Like, how does this execute? How does this all go? Because I want, so you talked about not having a license, not registering a car, not having plates, and not having an LLC. I would like for you to kind of go through, like, what does that look? Because a lot of people, what Marcus and I, and then when Nico came on, like, our whole, like, philosophy of how we wanted this show to go was we want to provide information that helps people solve their problems. And so I know, this isn't I'm advising you to do this stuff, but I just want you to tell people how that process worked out for you so that people can kind of do their own research based on what they hear to see if it's something that they think might be a useful tool for them.
Right. So let me put this disclaimer out there. I don't want to recommend that anyone do this because you're going to get stopped. You might get arrested. You might get your car taken. There's all kinds of things that might happen, especially if you don't know the right answers to the questions that they're going to ask. So there's always dangers, and I'm not going to be around to help you. You're not going to be able to call me and say like, dude, help me out, man. Help me fight my case. That's not something I can do. I got enough on my plate. So I do want to say that. But okay, so it's really kind of difficult to. There's not really a process you can do for this because there's a lot of trial and error, and it's like every government agent you come across is going to try a different tactic. They're going to try whatever they can to do whatever they can do. And so with so let me say, instead of telling you how to do what I did, let me kind of give some examples of like how the government works and responds. Because if you understand how they work and how they respond, then you can avoid their consequences and repercussions and whatever they're going to do. So, for example, what happens if you get a traffic ticket and you don't show up to court? A lot of times what they say is they're going to issue a warrant. But they can't really. They can issue a failure to appear warrant, but only if you have a contract, I believe, so take this with a grain of salt. I believe they cannot issue an actual warrant if you don't have a license or a contract with that state. And I'll give this example. I've never had a Texas driver's license, and I've gotten a million tickets in Texas. Never paid a single one of them. And I've gotten letters in the mail that say warrant, big word across the top, warrant. But to the untrained eye, this is like, oh my God, there's a warrant. I need to call the court and say, how much do I owe you?
The first time you get one of those, how does that hit? Or did you already kind of know what to expect? Well,
I learned from times before that, always read the fine print.
Okay.
It said warrant at the top. Then you read further down, collection warrant. So this is not an arrest warrant. Warrant is just a very broad term. Basically. It came from a law office. It says we have been authorized to collect this money from. So
it is a collection agency essentially at that point. Oh wow! So it's not even.
And so
okay,
I've sent them letters back saying there's this thing that I learned with. I did it when I was fighting credit card companies and debt collectors back in the day because I was young and dumb and went through all that shit. There's a law called the Fair Debt Collections and Practices Act, which says if you're getting phone calls, which I've gotten phone calls from police departments, I've gotten phone calls from these law firms saying, literally they're phone banking for money. We have all these tickets. Let's call people up and see if they'll send us money. And I would tell them,
you get a cut for it, right? They get paid a commission on what.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah,
absolutely. So I send them letters saying this, and this is part of the Fair Debt Collections and Practices Act. If you send them notice, they're not allowed to call you by phone. They're only allowed to contact you by mail. They can't call you anymore. It's only by mail. You can also tell them, I don't acknowledge the debt, and you need to show me proof that this debt exists. How does a debt get created? There needs to be a contract, right?
And so I didn't sign shit.
Send me the contract. And if you don't send me the contract and you continue to send me letters, I can sue you under this federal law. So not that I like the law, but I kind of like that one.
Well, that's the kind of law that's supposed to exist, right? The one that's supposed to protect your rights from having people fuck you over.
Balancing everything out.
Instead of the kinds that helps other people fuck you over.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they're very, very few of those, but they're there.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I got one of these tickets in Texas, and I signed it because they tell you sign it or we'll arrest you. So I signed it, and I went.
Okay, so you signed. That was going to be one of my questions. You do sign the ticket. Okay.
Let me think. Have I ever not signed it? I think I always sign the ticket.
Okay.
Okay. But it says you agree to appear here at this court at this time. So I went to that court at that time and I said, well, I appeared. Now I'm going to disappear.
Now I'm going to disappear.
Oh
shit! I love it.
And I even as proof that I appeared, just in case. I mean, I never had to actually use this, but like just in case, I'm like, okay, let me go ask where I'm supposed to be and like show them the ticket and see if they'll sign it or something. Like, yeah, they wrote down the room number of some prosecutor, but I was like, I didn't sign that I was going to talk to a prosecutor, so I'm not going to go talk to him. But they signed something on my ticket, so.
Wow. Okay.
And so here's the thing. Okay, so what else do they do, right? If they can't issue a warrant, what else do they do? They try to suspend your license. If you don't pay parking tickets, they'll in every state's different. In California, if you don't pay parking tickets, they'll suspend your registration. So I had to do this one time where I went to go renew my registration so I could get stickers so I wouldn't get stopped by the police. And they said, oh, you've got a few past due parking tickets. You have to pay those before you can pay the registration. Well, if my car is not registered, then they can't suspend my registration. And they can't make me pay for other things in order to get my registration. So one thing I did at first was I took my car to Nevada. When I was still living in California, I took my car to Nevada and registered it there.
Okay.
And now I had Nevada plates. So now California could not suspend my registration because they had no jurisdiction. But I also started saying, I would get a parking ticket, and I'd send them a letter with the same Fair Debt Collections and Practices Act notice saying, I have no contract with you. I didn't cause you any damages. And in one particular case, it was street cleaning in California. They're fucking notorious for that. And I told them, my car did not prevent you from cleaning the street because by the time I parked there, the street cleaner had already gone by. So I did not prevent you from cleaning the street. I caused you no actual damages. You can't sue me for anything, and I have no contract with you. I don't ever want to hear from you again. And I never heard from him again.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. There was another one, and this goes back to contracts. In California, and like I said, every state is different. In California, I went into a court for a traffic ticket, and this is when I still had a license and everything. And they sit you down in this room full of people, a couple hundred people in there. They line you up like cattle. Next, guilty, next, guilty, and before the judge comes in, the bailiff comes out and says, there's not a judge available today. Your case is going to be heard by a judge pro se. And then they go through this explanation. A judge pro se is a member of the bar. They're licensed to practice law, blah, 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 but they're not a judge, right? They don't tell you they're not an elected judge, but they're not a judge. Now, you have no obligation to sit through a trial because you have a right to a trial with a judge. So they tell you, if you want your case to be heard by a judge, you can say something now. And you can object now, and that's all they say. Well, what happens if you object? So I tried it. I object, and
you were like one of the velociraptors. You're just like,
yeah.
Nope.
So he's like, okay, come sit over here, separate from everybody else.
Yeah.
And I was sitting next to this guy who was like scared shitless. What are you doing, man? What are you doing? They're gonna send you to a real judge, and he's gonna stick you in prison, and like fear, like absolute fear.
No,
and
that shit works. They propagandize people so much that we will like work against each other to like scare each other.
Right.
Shit.
But here's the bullshit.
Yeah, exactly.
He took me to another courtroom where there actually was a judge. So wait, there was a judge this whole time. So did you lie to me when you said there wasn't a judge available? Okay. Now another time I stayed in the courtroom. I didn't object. Yes, I've gotten shit tons of traffic tickets, so don't judge me. I didn't object, and I said, okay, I'm just going to sit here and see what happens.
Right.
And so they the next thing they do is they bring out a clipboard, and they start passing the clipboard around. Everybody here needs to sign this. And I don't remember who said this, but there is never anything that you have to sign.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you have to sign it, you wouldn't need to sign it.
Right. Exactly.
So
They
So they're
need
passing this thing
your
around.
permission to do whatever's next.
And I read it, and it's an authorization form to surrender my right to an actual trial in order to have the fake judge hear my case.
Ooh.
So I don't sign it. I just pass it along. I go up, I argue my case, and I say, I didn't make a U-turn. I was charged with making a U-turn. I made a 3-point turn, which means I pulled into a driveway and then backed up and went the other way.
Yeah.
And they were like, guilty. And I was like, okay, whatever. Then I pulled the Fair Debt Collections and Practices Act on them, and like when they sent me a note, said, well, let me say this is another thing the state does. They try to make you pay up front. So when I said I want to plead not guilty at the clerk's window, they said, okay, you have to pay the ticket, and then you have to go to court, and then if you win, you'll get your money back. And I was like, I don't fucking trust you. So I was like, I don't have any money. And they were like, okay. Well, at first I was like, I don't want to pay, and then they were like, you have to pay. And I was like, well, I don't have any money. And they were like, oh, okay, well then we'll schedule a hearing with the judge so you can get released on OR, on your own recognizance that you're going to come back. Total bullshit. But anyway, so I did that. So they didn't have my money, and I lost, and they sent me like a bunch of letters saying, hey, we want this money. And I said, I don't have a contract with you because I never signed that thing. And I said, if you want this money, you need to prove that I owe you this money. I need a judgment from a duly elected judge or a contract or something else proving. And you know what they sent me? They sent me a ticket from somebody else. Like they said, like, this is how, like, yeah, they sent me a ticket from somebody else. And I sent them back another letter saying, this just proves how incompetent you are. And you have no idea what you're doing. I got to find this letter. I have it saved somewhere. And I'm like, so I'm not going to pay you. And if you ever ask me for money again, I'm going to sue you. And I never heard from him again.
Nice.
So what's interesting about this whole thing is like, and people ask me all the time, well, if you don't have to pay tickets and you don't need a driver's license, you don't need this and that, why can't I find a law or a court hearing that says so? Well, what, you think they're just going to tell you you don't do it? This is part of the whole scam. Right. But here's the thing. You will never see somebody who went to court using one of the arguments that I'm using, or some of these other guys using one of these arguments and getting convicted and having a court on record saying that, oh no, this person is not guilty. They cannot be convicted of this. What you'll see is when you start using these arguments, they'll usually throw you out of court. They'll call you crazy. They'll say you're an idiot, and then they'll dismiss your case because they don't want it on record. Because once it's on record, then everybody fucking knows. That's like, oh, we exposed the whole lie.
Yeah, they're like they're not the Joker, where the Joker tells Batman his whole plan and then runs off to go do it.
Right.
And Batman to escape and come stop him. Right. They're not like that.
That's just it. I mean, this is exactly what we've been talking about for some time. What, instead of being like head on trying to fight the state and do all that kind of stuff, we just need to make them fucking irrelevant so that they don't have any bearing on our lives. Just ignore their asses when you can and move on. And when you can't ignore them, just, try to find a way around them and those kinds of things. So Dan,
how do you do the LLC thing? Oh, go ahead, Marcus. I'm sorry.
Okay.
We'll get to that.
I wanted to ask Dan because I believe it or not, I've actually, and Dan may not even know this or remember this, but I met Dan in Texas in 2018, I think. I was there with Adam Kokesh because I worked for his campaign. And I met Dan in the lobby in Texas, and he and I had a pretty good conversation. And I told him, he was telling me he was running for president, and I didn't know because I came at this as an anarchist who supported Adam, So I was like, I didn't know any of this libertarian bullshit. So I just show up. I'm like, oh, and but Dan caught my attention, and all of this taxation is theft stuff, I think is very important. And I love the intellectual stuff that you get into, Dan, but that's not what made me go and eventually made you my second choice behind Adam for president. And that was a hard fight because I like Behrman an awful lot too. But the reason that you were my second choice wasn't the taxation is theft thing. I know that that's what people associate with you. what I liked and what I'd kind of like you to talk about, we've talked a lot about what the intellectual and the understanding of philosophy and ethics that you're putting out there. But what I liked was the way you brought people together. What I liked was you were the first person to say to me, and Adam adopted it, and many other people adopted it, and I wholeheartedly supported that. But you were the first person to say, we're on the same team. No matter who wins, no matter who does this is the same team, and we are fighting for the same reasons. So what got me, and I told Adam this too when in a conversation I had with him years ago, but for me, the intellectual stuff, I am an intellectual and I do think about it, but that's not what gets me. That's not what gets my support. What gets my support is finding that deep heart, that love of humanity. And I saw it in you from the beginning. I don't think it really fully blossomed for the rest of the world to see until you started putting out towards the end of your campaign. And for those of you that did not know, Dan ran for president as a Libertarian and did pretty well, especially for his first time. Exactly. But anyway, towards the end of your campaign, you started talking about particularly like finding ways to explain our positions to people in a way that hit their heart. And you talked about the way that, you can talk to a leftist and maybe that leftist has this or that opinion. And you just need to explain to them why, this is leading this way or that way. Can you kind of get into what drives you from a heart-based point of view? Yes, we talk about anarchy a lot on this channel, and we talk about politics, but we also talk about spirituality and heart-based understanding of reality. And I'd kind of like to hear where you center your heart when it comes to setting people free.
Right. That's an interesting question. And I've had an interesting an interesting path when it comes to all that stuff. So I grew up in California. My mom was she was a very charitable person. She was always involved with charities. She was always doing toy drives for Christmas and, all this other stuff. My grandfather was, he really loved animals. He was always contributing to like the WWF when it was the panda. Or I guess that is still WWF.
Yeah.
It's the other one that changed. And so like, I kind of got a lot of this, like I wanted to contribute, I wanted to help. And I remember even as a kid, my inner Keynesian would come out. Well, why doesn't the government just print more money and just like take care of all the homeless? And then my mom was like, well, because then there would be inflation. It was interesting. There was kind of all this. Later, I fell into, I went through being a seminar junkie for a while, and some of those were very spiritual. I ended up working for the Kabbalah Center so I was a video editor, and I was looking for work editing videos, and I fell in line with them, which was really awesome. Like the biggest claim to fame there is I got to shoot camera for Guy Ritchie once, which was pretty cool. And like I never really made that big of a career in that, but I got to like watch a lot of their content as I was editing it, and I was like, a lot of this is really interesting. So I got some stuff from there, and I don't know, I got stuff from all over the place. And I think like when I look at these problems, I kind of look at like, I could be selfish and say, okay, I want to get rid of the IRS. Okay, yeah, that's a me thing. That's what I want. But at the same time, like I kind of see the bigger picture where I'm like, okay, not everybody just wants to get rid of the IRS. And if I run around saying, let's get rid of the IRS, like most of the people aren't going to care. But then I started realizing like there are so many people who are negatively affected by the government. And as I started digging into it, I saw like we talked about earlier with like the healthcare system and the way it affects insulin prices. This is stuff I never would have thought of before. And so, like, as I see more and more of this, like, I see, like, this is really affecting everybody. And it kind of, like, I think the main thing at the core of me is that, like, I'm watching people get robbed every single day, and I don't want to just sit by and let that happen. You know, I kind of got triggered into, you know, getting involved with this, you know, politically, when, you know, I started seeing all these videos come out of, like, the police harassing people and arresting people and beating people up and all this kind of stuff. I was living in LA. I was like, I don't know how old I was. I guess I was like 10 or 11 when Rodney King went down, and, like,
So you're in like your early 40s
wow.
right now. You're
yeah.
because
I was born in 81.
47.
That was 90.
Yeah. Okay.
I think.
Yeah, because that was my senior year of high school, so
Same.
I'm a little bit older than you.
And it's so, like, I see all this and I'm like, this is just fucking wrong. Why does this happen? And so I think there's, like, a lot of, like, it's this one big thing, and it's hurting all of us, but everybody supports it because they think it's actually there to help us, but for some reason it never actually does that.
Right.
And most of the harm that it does is invisible. They misdirect us, right? So people are struggling to pay their rent, and they blame it on the employers not paying high enough wages, when the reality is the human condition was never designed to be dependent on employment.
Right.
That was a creation of the state through this, and what the lefties call capitalism, because I came up through the capitalist view of libertarianism, which was capitalism is free markets. Mm-hmm. But understanding what the people on the left refer to when they're right. using capital, they're using the same word, but they have a totally different definition.
Right.
And so that's more of the, you live on land, you have to pay a tax for that. Mm-hmm. And so therefore, in order to pay that tax, you need to go get a job in a factory so that you can pay the tax.
Mass migration into cities and everything.
And your biggest bargaining chip in any situation in life is the ability to just walk away. If somebody's charging too much for something, just walk away. If somebody wants to give you too little for something, just walk away. But when it comes to employment, they've taken that right away from us, because we can't just walk away and say, I'm going to live without a job. I'm going to move out into the woods. I'm going to grow my own food. I'm going to build my own house. I'm going to take care of myself. That's illegal because you got to pay the taxes. So now they're forcing everybody into this labor pool, which forces us to compete, which makes some of us get more desperate than others. I'll work for $5 an hour. I'll work for $4 an hour. Oh, well, that's getting too low. Let's set a minimum wage.
Right.
Whereas and then they get us mad at each other. Oh, that guy's retired at 30. Oh, they should tax all his money away and make him work like the rest of us. Well, that's going to put more people into this labor pool, which means you're all competing even harder. We should be getting people out. Retire early, save your money, get out. And then there's less people, and then the companies would be begging, shit, I can't find anybody to pour coffee at my Starbucks. I'm going to have to pay them $25 an hour.
What's always been crazy to me is because I work in industry, I work in the paper industry, and there are these folks who, like, they're really, really upset about, like, technology that comes in, because it's like, well, this is going to make it to where now there's 4 of us. We're only going to need 3 of us to do the work that we're doing now, because they can consolidate some of it with this new machine or these computers that do whatever it is. I'm like, that's great. You fucking hate this job. Why are you here? You should be doing something more productive and that's more creative and that you love and that you enjoy and gives you, like, some sort of fulfillment, not slaving away at this thing that you hate anyway, and you can barely stay awake. Y'all are sleeping half of your night shift when you're on graveyards anyway, because you're exhausted and it ruins your sleep schedule. How could you possibly want this to be your life?
Because they're afraid
we've been
going to lose their home.
Exactly. No, and I'm with it, because I feel that same sort of fear, because I know that, like, the field that I'm in has nothing to do with my degree. My degree's in broadcasting, and I work in chemical sales. Like, what? It's the only thing that they have to do with each other is, like, you have to be able to, like, talk to people to be able to sell shit, and that I got some of that from broadcasting. But I'm not a chemical engineer. I'm not a chemist. I'm not any of those things that most of the people in my field are. And so it's scary to me to think, well, shit, if I don't have this job, trying to find another job in this field is going to be very difficult, because competitively, there are other people who have more on paper, and I'm just going to have to go with my track record, basically, which at this point at my age is not a terrible way to go, because it translates well. But I can understand some of these folks who, like, they don't have like a broad skill set. They, at 18 years old, started working in this plant, working shift work, and they've worked their way up, and they know that job, and that's it. And they've, through seniority, progressed up to wherever they are, not through, and I'm not saying, like, these are like smart, talented, skilled people in a lot of cases, but they haven't gotten where they are as much on merit as it is on seniority, because of the union setup and everything with a lot of them. And so they're terrified of, like, holy shit, if at 58 I have to go try to find a way to slog it away until I get to retirement, how the fuck am I going to do this? And so technology intimidates them, when actually it could liberate them, because the reality of the matter is, like, the post hole digger was a great way to build fences without having to use your hands or just a shovel. You know, like, you can actually build a really long fence using a post hole digger instead of, and it's like tools and technology for a long time have been saving us blood, sweat, and tears. But you're right. Like, the way that the shit has been conditioned into us has made it, it's like a Stockholm syndrome. It's like it
takes away your initiative and find something, you know?
Right.
And I was actually, again, listening to you, Dan, you were making a statement on schools and things of that nature, and how they conform kids into working for factories and things of that nature. And it's like, it treats it like a 9-to-5 instead of exploring your possible ways, your possible creative ways of, learning something or doing something new, and so with you finding out something new to do, you find a passion that possibly turns into a pursuit more so than just a hobby. There's things that they take away with the timing of school, or they kind of turn you away from, and you just end up in this, like, a hamster in a wheel mindset. You're just waiting to be told when to hop on the wheel just so you can help society turn. But in all actuality, there's ways to, get the wheel turning without you necessarily feeling like it's all the labor and, taking away from your personality and things of that nature.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of that. I think the main thing that's keeping us right here is it's not just the fear and the conditioning, it's the position that we're in. Because and this is what's so dangerous about it, right? Oh, America's number one, our economy is the greatest, and, like, the stock market's always going up, everything's always going to be great. Yeah, and then Corona comes along, and you got to shut down businesses, and, like, even if, I don't want to argue over, like, the legitimacy of how much they're shutting down, but let's just say this is all, the only way to fight this is for everybody to hunker down in their homes for 12 months straight. Well, how are people going to pay their rent?
Right.
Everybody's in debt. I had this conversation with somebody, and they're like, yeah, the United States has the highest home ownership that it's ever been. No. They have homes in their names, kind of, with 30 years worth of debt attached to it. Right. So if they don't make those payments, and if they don't pay the government those property taxes, right, and I haven't heard about any government property tax relief program during this whole Corona thing,
right,
they're going to kick you out of your house. The bank is going
to take all your shit if you don't have it out of there before they kick you out. That's the other thing. That's the little secret.
Where are you going?
You don't have a job,
right?
It's absolute destruction. This is not. They say we have the strongest economy ever. No, we have a dependency on the economy to continue growing, and once the economy stops, we're fucked.
Yeah.
We
For sure.
need, if we wanted to have a strong, stable economy, we would build it on a strong, stable foundation, which is a foundation where everybody owns their land and their home and they have savings. And if the economy needs to disappear for 12 months straight, everybody's set. You have the food supply chain. Everyone still has money saved up to pay for that stuff, or they're growing their own food, or they're getting it from local sources or whatever. But everybody's taken care of and everybody's safe. Instead, we're all living with our heads underwater, treading water to try to keep our head. And we're like below. Like it's nonsense.
Back to that hamster wheel, though. That's how, if you're treading water constantly underwater, like that's the best way to keep the hamster wheel moving. Is you're constantly kicking your legs, you're constantly moving. You don't have a choice to get off and stop pedaling, because if you do, then your shit breaks down. And they don't want that. That's how they use that threat to keep the big turning.
You focused on the one thing,
keep you working in the factory.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I can see evidence of exactly what you're talking about, Dan, in my own life. You don't know this, but these two guys know this. I lost my job in August, and I loved my job. My job was great. Long story short, you can fail a urinalysis if you take too much turmeric. Didn't know that. And so
shit, man.
Yeah, I know. And I have arthritis. So I lost my job. But I had built over time, like I had enough Bitcoin and other savings that I was able to give myself another foundation. I had saved. Now it wasn't fiat. I had saved crypto, and I had saved, other things that I moved around, and I don't want to get into the exact nature of how I did it, but long story short, I built that foundation. So it gave me the time. Now I've got a job now that I actually make more money, and I cannot talk about what I do, but I make more money, and let's just say it is part of my job to cost the federal government money. So part of my job is to make sure people retain their money. But that kind of security that you're talking about, sure, mine was a short term, and had it gone, a month or two more, I might have been fucked. But it was enough where I was unemployed without a job during coronavirus, and was okay for a while. And if everyone had that, if everyone had, even we're talking, $5,000 in a savings account, they owned their home, they didn't have to pay shit, and all they're trying to do is just cobble together some food, maybe to pay their electric bill, whatever that is. If we were doing that, then, economically, we'd be a powerhouse.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think, at the same point, to Chad's point, if we all had that foundation, at some point we'd be like, okay, I'm going to stop running on the hamster wheel because I don't need to work. So we'd start retiring earlier, and then the factories would not have enough people to do whatever they need. Now, at this point in time, we're kind of like at this technological exponential growth where they'd say, okay, well, we're going to have to pay more for people to work. And then eventually people would be like, it's not worth it. And then they'd say, okay, we're going to automate everything. And we'd kind of head in that direction. And I think we'd probably get to a point where the economy doesn't slow down. It would continue to grow because there would be so much automation. But that threat is always there. If everybody decides, hey, you know what, I just don't need to work, I don't need to run on this hamster wheel, then a lot of businesses are going to go out of business. But not in a way that we like, when we say that now, oh my God, all these businesses are going to shut down. People aren't going to have jobs. That's not going to be the concern. The concern is going to be like, oh, I'm not going to get my factory stuff made. But in reality, it's like, no, if you really come up with some, right now we spend so much money buying so much bullshit. Like, just crap, this whole consumerist market. And it's like, these are the people that we're trying to keep employed to keep making more shit for us to buy, which is destroying the environment and like all this other stuff.
And the psychology of humanity too.
Yeah.
Like, it's killing people mentally and psychologically and emotionally.
Yeah, it's like we could completely do with it, and I get it, right? Because okay, so I'm in Mexico now, and I see this. It is possible to, because there isn't that sort of property tax. There isn't that sort of licensing and regulation. There isn't that sort of income tax. There are so many people who are living outside of the system that poor people are not afraid to be unemployed. Like, some people will just, like, all they own is a hammock and like a box of things that they sell. They wake up, they go to the street, they sell some stuff, they get some money, they use it to buy some tacos. Then they hang up a hammock in the jungle and they just sleep there. And that's a good enough life for them. And they're content with that. So if you can imagine, if everybody did that, then yeah, there's factories that are not going to have workers in it.
Right. Whereabout are you in Mexico? If you don't mind, if you don't mind saying.
Yeah, I'm around Cancun right now.
Oh, okay. No, because my brother lives in Guadalajara, and I've witnessed that. Like, he lived in Mexico City for a while, and then he moved there a while back, and I've witnessed what you're talking about. You go to certain areas now in the bigger cities, it's a little more difficult because, you know, just like U.S. cities, but you go out into the rural areas, and I've like, because my wife and I have talked about possibly like escaping there essentially. I have a little bit more of the fight rather than flight in me, because I feel like if we keep, you know, leaving to go to there, we're all just like, even like the Free State Project in New Hampshire, you know, it's like, all right, but if y'all all go to one place, then they can just be like, fuck that place. So maybe we should stay where we are and fight where we are, and that's kind of my thing. But we have talked about going down there because what I've seen is their government is so incompetent and so, I don't know, undermanned or relative to ours that, like, I don't know that they could even enforce some of the shit that they want to do. Like, we had a flat tire one time in between Guadalajara and Manzanillo, which is like on the west coast of Mexico, right there on the beach. We had a flat tire. No lie. This dude rolls up in like a pickup truck with an air compressor on the back and like a bunch of other shit. And it's like, MacGyver put this thing together. It's hung together by like baling wire and like duct tape and Band-Aids and toothpaste or some shit. And he I don't know how he patched the tire. He patched the tire and like inflated it and everything. We paid him $10 and then he took off in his little pickup truck, and that was it. And I'm thinking, like, if this is the US, this dude it's going to be $150 minimum just to cover all the licenses and everything else that he has to have just to be able to operate that business in the first place. And this is just like some dude with a pickup truck and a bunch of shit thrown together on the back of his truck that gets the job done, right? And that's what in a lot of, now you go to rural parts of the US and you see some of that stuff. And you go to rural Mexico, and I think you see it a lot more, it just seems like to me. And I think it's because of, you don't have the reach government-wise down there that you do up here. Up here, you have shit like Ruby Ridge. Down there, I don't know that they could pull off something like that because they don't have the
this is what's interesting too, is, you know, people will say that the more taxes you have, the more successful the country is, right? The US has really high taxes and look how successful it is. Mexico doesn't have really high taxes and look how successful it is. I think that's backwards. When people are successful and they have a lot of money, the government says, let's tax that.
Right.
And in Mexico, especially when you get to like the rural areas, I mean, they have squatters' rights. They have like, my wife's family has land in this place where it's like, literally it's jungle, and they dug out some roads, and like people just started saying, okay, this is mine, and they started putting up a little rocks around it, and then later they built a fence. Yeah, and they don't pay any taxes on it or anything, right? And like the plan is, like, if the city ever expands out that way, then of course they're gonna get incorporated and they're gonna have to start paying it. But as of right now, they're really just squatting, and nobody's harassing them, and a lot of them grow their own food there. They plant, you know, all kinds of fruit trees grow there. They have wild animals like pigs and chickens, and they're not wild, but it's totally possible to do that. And a lot of people are content like that, but it's like, and this is, this is a hard sell in the United States, because most people are like, I don't want to live like that. And the point is not
running water and flush toilets and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And electricity is kind of a
but
thing.
the idea is not that you should have to live like that. The point is,
you can.
Let's say you've got 3 options. How do you want to live your life? 1 is like that. 2 is, in a rural area where you've got running water and electricity and stuff. And then 3 is in a big city where you have everything, movie theaters right next door.
Right,
and all those,
right.
You've got all 3 of these, right? Those are competing for your business, and the prices are going to be lower because they have to compete with free. Now, if you remove the free option, the prices of everything else go way up.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, you shouldn't have to live the free way, but you should be able to live the free way.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, and in this country, you can't even live the second way, really. They impose laws that were intended for a city on, like I live in a little rural town in Indiana, and we're not allowed. We grow a lot of our, well, maybe not.
You can't collect rainwater?
I don't think we're supposed to collect rainwater. We've not gotten there yet. But we can't have chickens. Like I've got a garden. We've got we
can't have chickens, and it's
semi-rural. Yeah, we're not allowed chickens.
My neighbor has chickens.
Why the fuck not?
I was gonna say Nico probably has some chickens around him in Chicago. I know Unc has said he has like some in Philadelphia. They're like walking down the street in Philadelphia. Shit.
I can have rabbits. I can have rabbits, and I've thought about doing rabbits, but I can't have chickens. Wow. So they don't even allow us to have the in-between. My wife and I have this conversation frequently because I'm a little bit more of a technology guy than she is. And
so she's more willing to abandon it than you are?
Yeah, she'd live out in the woods. She'd be good.
See, I'm the opposite. My wife, we went to a camp one time for a week. It had to be like air-conditioned cabins. Like it was not going to be
glamping
or anything like that. Yeah,
right.
We were
so actually, I was driving down the highway and I
campers.
saw a sign for that down here, glamping, and I was like, "What's glamping? I've heard of that before." And then so we pulled up there, and it's like right on the beach, and like everybody's there with like their RVs and everything. Like
that's so
ignorant. That's great.
Total fucking total gringos too. Like
right, it have to be. But so we don't even So when we have our conversations, what I want is a happy medium. I want flush toilets. I want a nice hot shower, a good bathtub. But I don't want a bunch of bullshit. I don't want, the government listening to, we were talking about I need a new pillow last night. We didn't have any devices in our room. But suddenly I get a MyPillow or my wife got a MyPillow thing on her computer. And we've realized what's going on is we've got a smart TV. And so that smart TV is close enough to my bedroom to hear our conversation about a pillow and pick it the fuck up. And here you go. Let's get you a MyPillow. Pay $80 for some shit and do anyway. But I want something in between that. And that's the problem that we wind up with any fucking government, frankly, is that they want a cookie cutter what you get. This is what you get. You don't get all these different choices. But I think you're right, Dan. The first place you got to go is make the shit free, because you're right. At the end of the day, I don't want to live in free land. Free land would suck. But if I had to, I would.
You want to have the option to do it.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, because I mean, it's let's look at those 3 choices again, right? There's free land, and then there's let's call it A and B. If free land is free, A and B are going to be like, well, how do we sell this stuff? Let's make it $100 and $200. But then if you get rid of
go to free land, you're going to have to be really competitive with free land. Otherwise, you're going to lose all your customers to free land.
You eliminate that, and all of a sudden, A and B can jack their prices up to $1,000 and $2,000.
Right.
Like literally, they can take everything we have, which is what they're doing.
Just like the insulin thing you were talking about. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Dan, you talked earlier, and this is one of the things I like about you as well, is that you talked about learning, for instance, from the left, learning some of their language and learning some of the things. If you notice the logo behind me, that's designed with those colors on purpose. I'm influenced by Murray Rothbard. I come from Hayek. All that. Yeah, exactly. But in the midst of being influenced by that, I also read Emma Goldman. And so I started looking into the left anarchists and got that influence. What winds up happening is Emma Goldman, for me, is right about a bunch of shit, just not economics, is where I really got to with her. But the reason
he's got the little reds.
Right. That's why there's red in the logo, is because we recognize
just a little bit.
Right. Just a little squiggle. Because we recognize that they have
he's a Trump supporter. That's supposed to be a red wave.
Shit. Fuck Trump. Let's just make it clear. That motherfucker's a statist and he can kiss my ass. But
it looks like a red wave though, so I had to bust your balls.
Yeah, fuck you.
I always assimilated with ketchup. Ketchup over
So this is what's interesting about that is you have one of the arguments that I hear about capitalism, and this goes to like a Marxist definition of capitalism, is the people who have all the money control the government, right? So it's kind of like a monarchy where the king's in charge, or capitalism where the people with money are in charge. They make the rules. It's arbitrary. This isn't anything like what we call free market capitalism or ANCAP or anything else, but it's what they call capitalism. And the interesting idea is like, okay, capitalism is based on the word capital, which is money. And what's really interesting with that is like, just like communism, right? Communism is terrible if you force it on everybody. But if you want to voluntarily go to a commune and say, okay, yeah, we're all going to work together and we're all free to leave whenever we want, that's fine. Do that. If you want to go to the little capitalist city where like everybody's there voluntarily, they can all leave when they want, but it's all based on capitalism, that's fine. But when you force everybody to have money in their pocket, that's where capitalism becomes evil. And just like what we were talking about with property tax, that's the system we have now. It's impossible to live without money because you have to pay the king's taxes with that coin. So
I've stopped using the term capitalism altogether, just because I think it's one of those. I think anarchy is worth saving, but capitalism is not a word worth saving, because it's been so like just. It's so loaded on its face. Like it either has like people on the right that have it misinterpreted a certain way, and people on the left, and I'm just like, you know what? Like, I'm not even free markets. I want people to voluntarily interact with each other and conduct transactions with each other, and I want force, coercion, and fraud out of the picture. How do you feel about that? And then that usually is like, well, yeah, that sounds about right. And then whatever their interpretation of capitalism or communism or socialism or whatever,
doesn't matter.
Doesn't even matter anymore, because those terms are all so loaded on purpose. It's Orwellian the way that those terms have all been used.
And that's what happened with Anarchy too, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was so. I've actually kind of disassociated from both of those, and I use voluntarism now.
Yeah. Well, I don't have a choice because we're in this Aquarian Anarchy channel, and so I mean we're riding ride or die, bitch.
Everything.
Ride or die. Let's go.
But it's absolutely, and it's dangerous because whatever new words we choose, they're always going to try to do the same thing to
absolutely. Those. Yep. And that was kind of the point with Anarchy, is that I think Marcus and I, when we talked about it, was because I don't know, Nico, I think you would admit, right? Like you weren't fully on board the Anarchy bandwagon.
I mean, with the whole naming of it, it's like I stand for the values. I don't have a name over a lot of the things that I do. So like for the religion, I like, or not religion, but for the occultic thing, the voodoo is something that I look into, but then there's other things that I also look into. So for example, I still have some possibly a few socialist and communistic views, not the negative ones, but how it could be sociable and commune as a breaking things down. But I wouldn't necessarily. Sure, I'm an anarchist. Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well. Anyway, so like Marcus and I talked about like that fighting for the word, and not just giving it up, not conceding it, because again, back to the thing about like moving to Mexico versus staying here and fighting here.
Funny. Yeah, no,
I haven't wanted to like give up and run away, because then, like you said, they're just going to find another word that whatever word you get, like they're going to find a voluntarism. Yeah, well, everybody can't volunteer for everything. Somebody's got to pay for the shit. It's like that's not even what this.
Yeah, no, I'm here for the standing and making words
mean what they're supposed to mean,
but in a sense of like absolute of just absolving it of a negative connotation or a negative viewpoint, like the negativity around certain things. And I am all tabooed, like what I practice spirituality or from my political views, and to like how I just move in certain things. It's just, it's a taboo. And I'm like, nah, where's your history? Where's your facts? And then like they don't hit me with it. Then I'm like, well, I'm gay. And they look at me and no, happy. Not the term of being.
That's good. That's good.
See,
so no, right? Because it does.
What they do is they try and lump it together, and you can't do that. Like, stop lumping things together. Webster gave it one definition. It didn't give it a couple of words for the definition. It gave you a synonym for it or things of that nature. But you feel me? It's all about the definition, the real and actual definition behind things.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to wrap. Quick, Dan, I want to go ahead and I'll give you the last word here in a moment. But I want to wrap up the evolution of the revolution and then move into the Anarchy After Hour. And so what we'll do is Dan, if you want to kind of encapsulate these ideas into what you were about to say, then we'll wrap this show up and then begin the next one. Okay?
Sounds good.
Okay, go ahead and sorry.
You
were commenting on what Nico was saying about like.
Yeah, no. I don't want to start that because I'll go on like an hour-long tirade about.
All right, well then we.
Okay, that's fine.
I was just gonna say the government, like on top of the definitions that we use, the government codifies certain words too. So like what you think is an employee, according to the tax code, there's a very you're not an employee unless you work for the government. Like what? Doesn't make it. Well, that's what the law says. Like it's right there. You can actually read it. It's one of the few laws that's easy to read. But yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
All right. Well, yeah. Let's wrap. Let's wrap, and we can pick up in the next and get into more depth in that.
Right on.
But before we wrap, please like, subscribe.
Yes,
hit
absolutely.
Bell button,
Yes, hit like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Go to the store, buy some shit, buy some merch, and also subscribe to the Patreon. Become a patron. I did what Marcus does. Become an anarch. Become an anarch god. And then you can join the show for $20 a month. For $5 a month, you get the early access to this show that we're about to go into, and you also get some other exclusive content at the other levels. So, absolutely, please go ahead and do that and support the show.
Oh,
and also go. Sorry, Nico. Go to Dan's site, which will be linked below.
He's going to be linked to.
Yep, and support what he's doing. I don't know. We might dig into whether Dan's going to run for president again, and in the next show. Yes. Okay, awesome.
Oh, shit.
Good.
Here we go.
Yeah, we will get into that conversation as well. Support Dan. Again, y'all that watch this show long enough know that it takes a special person for me to vote for them. Dan was one of three I was willing to vote for. And so thank you very much for watching. This has been the evolution of the revolution. And for those of you who stick around until Saturday, you'll get to see the next hour then. Peace. Stay free.
I'll throw it up.
Taxation is theft.
Absolute, man.